Hello everyone, this is Kenny from Cambridge Tech and welcome back to the channel. So in this series of videos, we are learning Bootstrap 5 and we've gotten to the point where we are going to learn about margins and paddings. Now, every design interface would definitely have some margins and paddings and it kind of confuses a lot of people. I myself, sometimes I get carried away, and if I try a margin and it doesn't work, then I'll rather try a padding. But basically, there's a clear distinction between a margin and a padding. In order to understand margins and paddings, I'm going to right click what I have over here and go to index. Sorry, my browser actually. So I'm pulling this up and here we have, let me open this up very big. All right. So here we have what I'll call this interface, and within this interface we have the margin and the padding. Now inside of the elements, you can see that when we highlight any element, okay, for instance this button, I think, yeah, the button connects somewhere, yeah, this particular one, okay. When we highlight this, it gives us some kind of attributes within the browser, and here we have a border, a padding, and a margin. So there are three main things over here. We cannot talk about margins and paddings without talking about border, because the border actually defines whether we are getting into a margin zone or a padding zone. And this is very simple. So this is going to be like the box model. So every element, okay, let's assume every element has some kind of a border around it, okay. So for instance, this is the border around this press button, okay. The external distance between this border and another element, the border of another element, is the margin. And the internal distance between the elements as we have it over here, the text, is press. The internal distance between the element inside and the border is the padding. So the padding starts from the border into the element, and the margin starts from the border outside of the element. That's the basic difference between the two of them. All right, so now let's see how we implement margins and paddings over here. And right over here, let me just quickly move on to another Bootstrap class. Let's say we have a border. We have a Bootstrap class border, and let's have a paragraph in here. So let's say we have a lorem, and I just need 5 words over here. So this is the border. Now as you can see, the border is not showing very well. What I can now do to make the border very obvious is to have a class, for instance border danger. So now the color is now danger. And let me also add in this border -5 in order to increase the width of the border. So this is what we have over here. Now let me duplicate this. So I'll just copy this, Ctrl+C, and do a Ctrl+V over here, and I'll save this. Now as you can see, these two are joined together, okay. And let me just change the color of the second one to primary. So we have the blue and we have the red. As you can see, they are joined together. Like I said, the padding, okay, everything is respective with the border. The padding is the distance from the element inside, okay, from the distance of the border into the element. So that's going to be the padding, and the margin is going to be the distance from the border outside the element. So if I want to separate these two, remember the border, there's some kind of direction around it. We have it to the top, we have it to the right, we have it to the bottom, and we have it to the left. So in order to kind of separate these two, we can actually target this particular red or danger border over here and apply a margin to the bottom, or we can target this primary or blue border over here and apply a margin to the top. So either ways, we are making sense in terms of the relative direction to each other goes. So let's say we want to apply a border to, to separate this, all that I need to do is to come in here. Sorry, I want to apply a margin to separate this. All that I need to come in here, I can do M, and that's the margin. So I can do M1. When I do M1, look, you can see that we have margin to the top, to the right, to the bottom, and to the left. Okay, so it starts with margin 1. We can do margin 2, and if your guess is as good as mine, margin 2 will increase it. Okay, you can do a margin 3, will increase it. Margin 4 will also increase it, and margin 5 will definitely make it big. So it starts from margin 1 to margin 5. So that's M-1. So that's what we have over here, and you can see that it is applying the margin to the top, to the right, the bottom, and left as well. Now let's say we want to apply the margin just to the bottom, so we can do MB. So when I do MB, you can see that we are now resetted back to where we are, but the margin is only applying to the button over here, and that's exactly what I would want to demonstrate with this one. Now let's come to the second border element we have over here, and that's with the primary. Okay, this one, we want to apply some padding, and remember the padding is going to be the internal distance. So we are starting from the border into the element, so from this border into this text element we have over here. And if your guess is as good as mine, we can also start from, this is going to be P. So when we do a P1 is going to affect all the 4 sides. Okay, when we do a P2, it is going to gradually increase. A P3, as you have it over here, a P4, and finally a P5 will make it quite bigger. So this is applying a padding. Remember, I keep on stressing that a padding is from the distance of the border into the element. So this is a border, and we are getting into the element. So it increases it to the top, to the right, to the bottom, and to the left. All right. So now this is what we have for the margins and paddings. So this is just one example. Now let's look at other things we can do with margins and paddings. So let's say we have a link tag, okay, or an anchor, an anchor tag, and let's say we have save over here. So we have this button, and I want to have a class of btn dash info. You can see that this is stacked to each other. Now what I want to do is I want to apply a margin. Remember, a margin is going to separate these 2 elements. Okay, so I want to apply a margin so that I separate this. All that I can do is I can just come in here and let's say do M5. When I do M5, you can see that this has been separated. Okay, let's say I want to apply the margin just to the top. I can do MT5. When I do MT5, you can see that the one to the right, to the left, has now been taken care of. Okay, if I want to just apply it to the right, okay, to the right, initially we could have done MR for the margin right and ML for the margin left, but MR is not working anymore as far as Bootstrap 5 is concerned. We now do MS, so that's the margin stats, so the stats. And once we do this, we can see that we are now shifting it from the stats. We are giving a margin, and that's basically what this means. All right, so now let's look at other examples. Let me do this. I'll do a Shift Alt and a down arrow key to add in more buttons over here. So as you can see, this is what we have showing up. And let me just get rid of these margins so that you can see that under normal circumstance, these are going to be very close to each other. But once we have the margins showing up over here, you can see that there's some kind of separation. All right, let's look at another example. And with this one, we are going to look at, let's say we have a paragraph. And let's say we have a lorem 10. Sorry. We have the lorem 10. So we have this showing up over here. And let me do a Control C and bring this, Control V. And yes, we can also apply some margins over here. And in order to do so, let's say we want to separate this from this. Okay, so we can come into the paragraph, the first paragraph over here, and we can do a margin top because we want to separate it from the top. We can do a margin top 5, and as you can see, we are now have this separation. There's also another one we can do, and that's going to be the margin to the top and bottom at the same time, and also to the left and right, or to the start and the end. Now we can do margin top and let's say margin bottom and do 5 5, and clearly this has also increased, but this defeats one of the fundamental principles of computer programming, and that's dry. So you do not repeat yourself, or if there's a better way of doing something, you just have to go with that. So instead of doing margin top 5 and margin bottom 5, we can simply do a margin y 5. So margin y is going to apply margin of 5. So first of all, let me just leave it like this so that we set it out to the default. When I do a margin y of 5, it is now going to apply a margin to the top and bottom. And remember, we are applying this to this particular class. Let me give it another class of txt danger. All right, so this red is where we are applying the margin, or the my5, so that we have a margin to the top and bottom. All right, we can also do same for margin left and right, or for margin start and end. And if your guess is as good as mine, that's going to be mx. Okay, the same applies to padding as well, and we are going to come back to this to apply some paddings over here. So let's say we have a class over here, we can do mx. Okay, now when we do mx of 5, remember this is this particular line over here, and we want to apply some margin to the start and end. So when I save this, as you have it over here, you can see that we now have some kind of space before the start and the end of the particular element we are applying this to. Now as we have it over here, let's come to the save button. We can come in here, remember this is the margin. Okay, we can come in here and let's say apply a padding over here. So this is the first button. Okay, let me change this to dark. So with the dark button, as we have it over here, we can do a padding. When I do a padding of let's say 3, remember it's going to apply a distance from the border to the text itself. So when I save this, you can see that this now becomes bigger than what we have over here. Okay, now let me also do this. We can also do this, and we can also do, let's say, an mx. So let's do an mx, and an mx is going to be the start and end, or the right and left. And when I do 5, you can see that, no, sorry, I want to do padding. Sorry, padding. So when I do this, you can see that this button has now become bigger than it used to be. Now there's also one class as far as buttons are concerned, and these are not really button classes, but then you can actually do some of these things to also style your buttons. And let me quickly add that one over here, and I'll just do a rounded dash pale. So when I do a rounded dash pale, you can see that we have this neatly styled, and we can also add a btn. We can include the outline over here. Okay, and once we save, we have this neatly styled over here. Now I would want to separate this from this as we have it over here. So definitely that's going to be like a margin to the top. Okay, a margin to the top, a margin to the top. So I can do empty, and when I do empty of 4, you can see that this has now been separated from this border over here. So this is with margins and paddings. You can play around it, take a particular element and work your way through. So in summary, what we've done over here is we've looked at margins and paddings, and a clear distinction between the two is the border is the starting point. So if we are going into the element or into the border, then we are looking at padding. If we are going outside or increasing the distance outside, then we are looking at margin. Now, in both ways, we can have a margin to the top, to the right, to the bottom, and to the left. Okay, and with Bootstrap we use M for margin and P for padding. Now when we do, for instance, M-5, that means you're applying margin to the top right, I mean all the four corners, 5. When we do MT-5, we are applying a margin to the top 5. When we do MB-5, we are applying a margin to the bottom 5. In that same way, when we do PT-5, we are applying a margin, a padding to the top 5, and so on and so forth. Now we can also do an MY-5, where that's going to be a margin to the y-axis, that's the top and bottom at the same time. And we can do an MX-5, that's going to be a margin to the right and left. All right, so this is going to be the end of this video. Now if you find this video very useful, kindly subscribe to my channel and don't forget to hit on the notification button if you are yet to. Also share this video with friends and family who find this content very useful. At Cambridge Tech, we say learn programming, you can do it. Bye bye.